Hey, this is Bryce Johnson from Travel Channel's Expedition Bigfoot. You're listening to the Bigfoot Society podcast.
Thanks for coming back to Bigfoot Society, your weekly cryptozoology focused podcast where I talk to a different individual in the cryptozoology field, authors, researchers, artists, all sorts of people. If you're listening to this on iTunes, please go ahead, subscribe to this podcast and rate us 5 stars, as it helps us get more into the podcast stratosphere and get better guests on the show. Also, if you're on YouTube, do us a favor, like this video and subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost a thing, and it helps us get out there into the YouTube stratosphere as well. Be sure to leave what your favorite part of the episode was in the comment. Welcome back to another episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. This week, I've got the privilege of interviewing good friend Jordan Heath, co-host of the Campfire Tales of the Strange and Unsettling podcast. Had a great, fun time chatting with Jordan. He's just a wealth of knowledge. We talked about all sorts of stuff. This episode also goes on some interesting rabbit trails that the podcast hasn't gone before, but I know you'll enjoy it. I enjoy talking to Jordan, and some interesting chat about Bigfoot at the end as well. Do me a favor, subscribe to Campfire Tales of the Strange and Unsettling podcast on your preferred podcast platform. And I'm going to put all the links in the show notes, and check out their Patreon too. These guys are doing the good work, and want to keep them going. So enjoy this interview with Jordan Heath from Campfire Tales of the Strange and Unsettling podcast, and enjoy yourself. Have a good one. All right, welcome back to the Bigfoot Society podcast. I've got a good friend with me tonight, Mr. Jordan Heath from Campfire Tales of the Strange and Unsettling. How's it going, Jordan?
Dude, it's going so well. I'm excited to be here.
Oh man, I'm excited to have you here. This is one of those ones where, it's someone I've been talking to a long time, but then actually get to have like a one-on-one interview. And I've been on Campfire before, and just really been looking forward to getting you on here. And the stars aligned, and we were able to get you on. I'm happy to have you on, dude. We got a few people watching live in the Patreon group. If you want to see these interviews live, you can go to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society, and you can kind of watch it as it happens. Then we have an after show after the main show, where Patreon members can ask their questions to Jordan or whoever's on the hot seat. So let's start out though with a reading your bio that you provided, and kind of give people an idea of what's going on. So Jordan Heath is a writer, musician, artist, and amateur historian. He's the co-host of Campfire Tales of the Strange and Unsettling, and a contributing writer at Paranormality Magazine. A husband and father of 5 from Indiana. This bona fide enthusiast of all things bizarre is on a personal quest to revel in the mysteries found in the blurry edges of our reality, which is a very, very cool way to say it. Jordan, I'm going to talk about your podcast for a second, if that's all right.
Sure.
And I know listeners have heard me talk about that. Maybe they haven't, but Campfire is such a fun thing to listen to. The audio, what you put into how the audio is, the audio engineering, the stories you create, and it's amazing. It needs to definitely be on everyone's listen to. I mean, it's still the best piece of produced content about the Van Meter visitor, in my opinion. Like, that episode is the top of the top, dude. For audio.
I really appreciate that.
It's amazing. It's like the way that you did the story, like 20 minutes of story part at the beginning. It's like you guys were actually there. That's how it's like you guys were looking around and seeing it happen, and then it's awesome. So hats off to you.
Thank you.
You are still the best.
That comes from a ton of research, like being able to actually show that first person perspective. Like, you have to know some. I mean, it's not just even research about the event, but research about the time period, the historical context, the way people spoke to each other during that time, like other things that were happening in that area at that time.
Okay.
Like all that's important. Yeah.
Is that anything that you can maybe go into a little bit about, like, so, like, let's take that episode for example. What kind of other things did you research besides, like, I'm sure the Chad Lewis book came up, you know?
Right. Well, a big thing there was actually a big dispute going on in that town at the time
Mhm.
about the labor forces that were working the mines, which actually came into play in the story. Right, was the mine.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of tension, I guess, between the person who owned the mine and most of the people who lived in the town worked in the mine.
Okay. Yeah,
Was
sure, sure.
right. So he was kind of like a reviled figure almost because of
Oh, wow.
his practices with his laborers. So that was a big part. There was a lot of tension between him. So when the Van Meter visitor occurred, when that incident happened,
Mm.
there had to be cooperation between um, back then it was called the town elders,
Sure. Yep, yep.
basically the people who founded the town, right? And they basically called the shots in those
Oh,
small
sure,
towns
yeah.
back then. So there had to be cooperation between those town elders and the guy who ran the mine in order to
Mhm.
orchestrate that whole, because everyone kept seeing the Van Meter visitor go back toward the mines,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
So when they came up with this plan to basically chase it back to the mines, um, which wasn't a lot of people who cover it, they'll say like the last time it was seen, they just like they were like, "It's going that way, let's go that way." But it was planned. Like they were like, okay, they sat down, the council, all that, and they actually came up with a plan that the next time someone saw it, they would all rally and go out there
Exactly, the
and chase it
posse.
back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so there had to be there's this tension between the elders who were setting up this plan and
Oh,
the
sure. Yeah,
guy who ran the
totally.
mine. Yeah.
Oh, man, that's awesome. So, maybe to even, go a little bit further. So, is there a particular resource where you got, like, that idea of, like, the tension that was in the town at the time, or
There were honestly there was a lot of newspaper articles from Des Moines
Okay, yeah.
in that covered these small labor disputes that were happening
Oh,
all over the
wow.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Van Meter actually was specifically listed as a place where that was happening in several of them.
Oh, that's blowing my mind, Jordan. That's amazing. You just totally, like, opened my mind once again about that story, which I really appreciate.
Yeah,
That's just a small example of why you need to be listening to Campfire Tales of the Strange and Unsettling, because and you guys cover, all sorts of stories. So hats off to you. But
thank you.
let's start. I always like to start at the beginning of the story. Um, so Jordan, what was it that got you into all this weird stuff to begin with?
Okay, so there are two people that I can like sort of lay that at the feet of.
Okay.
It's my dad and his younger brother.
Okay.
My dad, I grew up listening to, and this is what specifically piqued my interest in cryptozoology,
All right.
was I grew up listening to my dad tell this story like every weekend around a bonfire.
Mm-hmm.
He would be out there with his brothers and his friends, and I would sit and hear him tell this story um, of he and his older brothers encounter with what he thinks is a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch
No way.
in Alaska when they were
Ooh.
teenagers. And it's this like my dad is a masterful storyteller.
Oh man.
Like, so I grew up hearing this story over and over again, and it seemed like every time I heard it, it got a little scarier. And
Wow.
it just like I so I was interested. I mean,
Mm,
he made it interesting. And on top of that, growing up watching like Unsolved Mysteries and
totally.
all those
Yep.
shows
Yep.
with him, he was always really into that stuff. Um, So that started me off when I was young, like grade school age.
Okay.
And then in my early teen years, my uncle, his younger brother, he's always been, I want to say, even in a weird family, he was always kind of the black sheep because
Okay.
he
All right.
was he's always been into this like esotericism. He's always
Mm,
been into like occult stuff and like
okay. Sure.
tarot reading and
Yeah.
lucid dreaming, and you know what I mean?
All the
Like,
fringe stuff, you
yeah,
know? Yeah,
yeah.
sure.
Um, and I remember specifically when we were like, I was like 14 probably, me and Ryan, my co-host.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
Um,
Cool
I
dude.
remember us sitting on my back porch listening to my uncle give us tips on how to lucid dream.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, when we were like 14 years
Wow.
old.
Yeah, that'll
Um,
do something to you.
yeah. So
Wow.
just him always being, and he was like kind of the cool one,
Mhm.
out of all my uncles. So growing up, like listening to him talk about stuff like that, it it really piqued my interest.
So there's no way you guys wouldn't have ended up being into the weird and cryptid as well. After knowing all that, like,
Yep.
that's a pretty awesome, upbringing, especially being able I love how you're able to grow up hearing your father's, Bigfoot encounter story in Alaska.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Something very special to have that oral tradition, passed down to you around the campfire, and,
Yes.
not many people experience that these days, I would say. So that's a very special thing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Um, um, I'm might be as bold to ask, is that anything that you can you share that story, or is that
Um,
overstepping bounds? If you can
no,
say
no.
no, but
I don't think I wanna give the full story because
okay,
I
okay.
really wanna do something with it at some
Oh,
I don't know if I
of
wanna,
course,
like,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if I wanna write a story based on it or, actually just have him come on and tell the story sometime on our podcast, but,
In that case, I will say let's take the present and wrap it back up, and then listeners will be able to open it at a future point. I
okay,
know I will be very excited to hear that now. So you got me hooked once again.
excellent.
Let's talk about this. So when someone asks you about, like, okay, you got this campfire podcast, how do you explain what the podcast is? What's your elevator pitch to people when you talk to them about your podcast?
So, basically, the elevator pitch is we what we do is we take actual reported events from history,
Okay.
and we we sort of put these ideas, the concept is to put these ideas out in like this time honored tradition of
Mm,
the campfire story, right?
yeah.
It's something everyone's familiar with. It's something that a lot of people experienced growing up. Um, and it it acts as a platform for people to explore these ideas.
Mm, very cool. Very cool. I like putting a spin on that. Is um, what is your goal with the podcast? If that's something that we didn't just cover, I guess if there's anything different to
Yeah.
tack on with that.
I mean, there are of course lots of lofty goals like
Hmm.
creating a community for, people who are
Yep.
into
Yep.
things that that normal society usually sort of puts on the back burner. But
Exactly.
honestly, we just the forefront of our mind most of the time the goal is to scare people.
Oh,
I
I
mean, when
love
you're
it.
writing
I love it,
campfire
dude.
stories,
Yeah.
it's got to be scary, and that's where the fun is, right? We all love a good scare. So
Totally.
that's mostly what we're doing here.
What episode do you have a favorite, or is there one that scares you the most?
Yeah, I mean, that's 2 very different answers,
That's
but
true. It
I'll
is.
answer
Yeah.
both of them.
All right. Cool.
I think I struggle with this because with this question because we cover, like, categories, right? Like, several
Mm,
categories. My favorite cryptid episode we've ever done by far is the Van Meter Visitor.
it's good.
I love that episode so
It's so
much.
good.
The research was so much fun, and the story was great, but the debrief was so much fun.
Mm.
Like just digging into all the little details, and
Mm-hmm.
I love that era in American history anyway, the when towns were being settled and when, the West was being settled.
Yep.
That
Yep.
basically from like 1840 to 1920 is like my favorite. That's my favorite. I love anything that happens out there. But I also recently we did an episode on Sarachina,
Okay.
which was it's a town in Bulgaria, and they had this event in the early 90s where the Bulgarian government basically came in and took over a town and sectioned off this area and just started digging,
Whoa.
like straight down digging. And there are all these wild reports like the Bulgarian military was being guided by like psychics and mystics who were telling them that there was something, valuable, whether societally valuable or monetarily valuable. That's, up for discussion, but they dug for 2 years.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I mean, like there are psychics who were involved in the project who later ended up committing suicide, talking about
Oh.
how they were like linked with this consciousness that was discovered below ground,
Mm.
and that it was like had been tormenting them, and it's a wild story.
That's
It's
awesome.
because on top of all that, as soon as they broke ground, the area started experiencing all these like Skinwalker Ranch style
Oh, no way, really?
phenomena. Yeah, like
Oh my goodness.
UFO sightings in the sky, like shadow creatures, like all these reports just
Dude.
exploded for 2 years while the military was there digging. Yeah, it's
Wow.
it's very interesting.
That's some Indiana Jones stuff, dude.
Yes.
That's some Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. We'll see
Yep.
who's who's into those deep cut LucasArts
Right.
1990s point and click adventure games like I am.
Yeah.
So if you are, let me know in the comments for YouTube if you like that game because it's a good game. Um, it's a really good game. I play it again now. Uh, man,
Yeah, but those 2 are probably my favorite that we've done. But the ones that scare me the
yes,
most,
yes.
the episodes that scare me the most are, first of all, any of them that like butt up against the true crime genre.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes when we cover a haunting, it ends up feeling like a true crime show because you
Oh,
have to talk
100%.
about, whatever tragedy sort of was the catalyst for the haunting you're discussing.
Okay.
Um, but demonic possession
Mhm.
terrifies me. The
Yeah,
whole concept.
that's a topic where I am like, for different reasons, I'm super like, uh, hands off, like,
Yeah.
the just be I mean, I've heard things where it's like, uh, "There's Pandora boxes you don't wanna open, and you
Yeah.
don't need to open,
Yeah.
and, if you do, that's your thing, but as for me, I wanna keep my house safe." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's
Oh, I
crazy stuff,
I
dude.
completely yeah, I completely understand. I don't do them anymore. I
Mm,
make Ryan do them when we're
ah,
gonna cover one,
sure, sure.
because I've covered I've done the research and written the story for 2
Yeah,
demonic possession episodes since we started about 9 months ago, and the last one that I did, I mean, I legitimately had recurring nightmares for a month
not good, dude,
after
not
doing
good.
the research.
Yeah,
It just felt unhealthy to me,
yeah.
so, yeah.
I
So I
hope
don't
you
do
were
those
I
anymore.
hope you were able to get that, taken care of. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good, that's good. Um, so, well, I asked for it and you provide the answers. Those are great examples of how Campfire goes all over the place, and I love that. I did as I was reading your bio, I kinda had an idea. So, we mentioned you're from Indiana, correct?
Yeah.
Is there a favorite weird story that you like to share from Indiana about, like, you live in the state? Do you have any, like, fun stories you found from research or anything like that?
Honestly, people familiar with cryptozoology in general probably
Mhm.
have heard about the mud mermaids,
Mm.
right? That's probably because we're pretty light on cryptids in
Mm-hmm.
Indiana. It's basically that and the Beast of
Mm-hmm.
Busco.
Right. Big turtle.
Yeah. Which is also a great story. The Beast of Busco is a great story, but I like the Mud Mermaids because they're unique. You know, we're a landlocked state,
Yeah, that's weird.
and we have a mermaid cryptid, right? It's weird. But of course they're mud mermaids because they were seen in the Ohio River, which is like
Is it
so
pretty muddy?
nasty. It's
It's nasty, yeah.
the stretch of it that's in Indiana. Yeah,
Okay. All right.
it gets narrow in Indiana, and it pulls a lot of sediment, and it's
Yeah.
just not, you know, it's not clear.
Oh my goodness. Yikes.
Um, so Indiana really is like rife with hauntings.
Oh, really?
That's like
That's the thing.
Indiana's bread and butter.
Okay. All
You
right.
can't throw a rock without breaking a window in a haunted house
Oh
in
boy, you probably
Indiana.
wouldn't want to do that either.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I live, I don't know, 3 blocks
Yeah.
from the Monroe House, which has
Mm.
been investigated by like
Oh, like
Travel
the big
Channel
guys,
ghost
yeah, like
shows
Ghost
and
Adventures,
yeah,
all that. Okay. All right.
yep. And it's that one's weird to me
Mm.
because I I grew up with a close friend who lived right next to it, and
Oh.
just a normal family lived in that house for,
Oh, weird. Yeah.
for a long time. It's
Okay.
just a normal house. At some point in the early 90s, I think they found they dug up in the basement, they dug up human remains
Mm.
in the
That
basement of the house.
that's a no for me, dog.
Right.
Oh, man.
Uh, but the thing is, like, it was beneath. So here's the thing that most people leave out.
Okay.
The human remains were found in a place where the foundation had been demolished,
Oh my goodness.
right?
Yeah.
So it was below where the house was built. So odds are those human remains had been there since before the house was there, right?
Weird. That's really weird. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that makes the house more or less scary because, 150 years ago, that was probably just a field that someone buried their uncle in. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It could have been that or, any number of nefarious things.
Mm.
But yeah, Indiana has some weird stuff.
Wow.
Light on cryptids, but a lot of hauntings. A lot of hauntings.
Did not guess about the hauntings and the people buried in the basements.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We also get a lot of
yeah.
UFO sightings because
Oh, okay.
we're such a flat state. It's a lot of open sky. You know what I mean?
Mhm, mhm. It is
So,
flat, yeah.
and we have maybe 3 what the rest of the country would call large cities in all of Indiana.
True.
So, the vast majority of our 96 counties are cornfields and small towns with a few stoplights, you know?
Yep, kinda Iowa-like there for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Not a lot of light pollution to contend with.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
yeah, a lot of UFO reports.
Oh, man. Oh, man. That is wild. I'm gonna have to look at the Mud Mermaids because that's one I actually haven't heard a lot about, and I'm gonna check that out, so thank you
Yeah.
for enlightening me about that for sure. Um, I would like to the other cool thing that you do a lot of cool stuff. Uh, we've talked about the podcast a little bit. You also, write for and I had
There it is.
you know who on the podcast last week.
Yeah.
But man, Paranormality Magazine, let's just say it again. I said it all last week too. It's probably well, it is a must subscribe to. And I said, if you're a Bigfoot guy, you need the Bigfoot Times, but then you also need Paranormality Magazine because it covers like the UFOs, the ghost stuff, but the cryptid stuff, which my audience is going to be into. And Jordan is writing some amazing articles about cryptids in every episode, in every
Yep.
issue, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really the place that I can focus my energy on cryptids exclusively. I want to make sure because when I first came on, um, the magazine focused a lot on UFO stuff
Okay.
and hauntings. Um, that's mostly what was discussed in the magazine.
Hmm.
And I saw a hole right? So I was like,
Okay.
let me come on.
Yeah.
I'll put something cryptozoological in every issue.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because that's a huge part of this community
Oh
is
yeah.
the cryptozoology community. I mean, the
Mm.
show is built around it, right?
It literally is.
So yeah, and it's been a blast. I was actually brought on by Aaron Deese
Oh, such a
from
good dude.
Hey
Yep.
Strangeness. He also writes for the magazine, um, and he was like, "You should do this." So he set me up with Jack, and yeah, it's been awesome. There's so much freedom writing for it too. I've never had to worry about anyone telling me what I should be writing about.
That is so
Um,
cool.
yeah, and I think that's why the magazine is so good because people are writing about what they care about, not what they're
It's a
told to care
huge
about
deal.
that month.
Exactly. Paranormality Magazine, check it out. Have you had an article that that comes to mind where you had like really a ton of fun researching it, writing it, or is it a thing where like you're just having a blast every month because you get to choose what you're writing?
I mean, they've all been fun, but the one that my very first no, the most fun. I was gonna say the first one was the most fun, but it wasn't. The most fun I've had researching one was the Go Row.
Oh yeah, Arkansas, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
dude.
Because I love the again that same time period as Van Meter, right? That same like
Mhm.
40-year span,
Yeah.
and I love the like yellow journalism and the like these crazy often exaggerated newspaper headlines and writing. Back then, you could write newspaper articles so colorfully.
Mhm.
Like now, of course, and it's important
Right.
that we have fact checking and all that in journalism, but
Oh yeah.
they're just so fun to read. I mean, people wrote newspaper articles in the late 19th century. People wrote newspaper articles like they were writing a serial. Like
Yeah, tell me about it. Like the Van Meter article from
mhm.
Des Moines is a perfect example of that, where it's like fired enough bullets to
Yeah,
sink
sink the
the
Spanish
Spanish
Armada.
Armada or
Yes,
something. It's like, what in the world, guys?
yeah, I love it. I love
Yeah.
that style too. I love that
Mhm.
I think that style has really inspired the way I write.
Okay.
Um, because I mean, I love, I'm a fan. I'm always a fan of a good alliteration. I
Mm.
love like flowery language. It's it's important to me, right? Like I don't, especially when you're writing like a campfire story or something that's supposed to
Oh,
be
yeah.
scary, right? Like you need that extra depth to pull emotion out of people.
And the thing is that nobody else is doing it.
Yeah.
And so when you listen to something like Campfire, it smacks you across the face because it's like, whoever put this together spent a whole lot of time caring, and I should be paying attention because this is well done.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. I'm glad it has that effect.
yeah, on me at least. So hopefully others as well. Um, it's come out so far that you're doing a ton of research in all your stuff, paranormality, campfire, etc. Can you maybe walk me through like when you're getting ready to write the story for the podcast or to do the article? Do you have like common research ways or books you're going to, or like how does that research look like for you?
Sure. I mean, the process in general is when it's my week,
Mhm.
because we alternate, Ryan and I.
Ah, sure.
Um, when it's my week, I choose a topic. We, like most people in our field, have a massive list of future
Okay.
topics, right? An ever growing list. Um, and then research comes first. I spend like 3 to 5 days creating notes, and
Mm,
the research I like primary sources.
yes.
I'm coming from an academic background, I'm kind of obsessed with it. I I mean, we might be one of the few podcasts that have like a dedicated bibliography. right? Like I have,
Sure, yeah. Okay.
yeah, I have a massive Word doc on my computer that is just a constantly growing reference list of
Oh,
everything
man.
we've used for research. Um,
You need to make that available somehow.
oh yeah,
Like maybe
it's
a
coming.
Patreon thing or something. Like that's awesome. You have that.
Yeah, it's coming
All
for
right,
sure.
you got it. You got it. Cool.
So I spend like 3 to 5 days doing research because I have a 2 weeks total to create my episode. Um, and then writing the story is like 3 days, a
Okay.
draft per day.
Wow.
Um, sometimes 4, but usually 3. Um, yeah, and then I record the story. Sometimes sometimes I include like sound design notes and stuff in
Mm.
while I'm writing the story, but I record the story and maybe write some of the music. Ryan and I write all the music in our podcast
No
as
way,
well.
really?
So yeah.
I think I knew that actually, but, like, that's fantastic. Wow.
Aside from the music that's under the debrief, a friend of ours, Greg Martin from
Okay,
Reverent Music, he
okay.
wrote that. But the music behind the stories,
Mm.
that's us.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so I record the story, maybe do some music. Ryan does the bulk of the music.
Okay,
He just has a better home setup than I do.
gotcha.
So he does a lot of that. And then I send the story to him and he does the sound design.
Mm.
Like he takes my notes and
Okay,
makes it gorgeous.
okay.
But all the like Foley work, all the sound library stuff, that's
Wild.
him. Um, and then we sit down and do the debrief, record the debrief together. And yeah, that's basically the process.
Man, it's no wonder that the episodes are that good. Like, I had no idea that is a solid, like, 2-week process.
Yeah.
That's wild. Hats off to you, man. And, having 5 kids, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're making it happen, dude. That's some wild, wild stuff. Let's talk about, I wanna talk about, for a few minutes about you guys have a Patreon, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, for us to get that out there. But so Patreon is a thing where you join it, you can support the podcast you like listening to, but then you get extra content, right?
Yes.
Do you mind spending a few minutes like sharing what people can get as a supporter of Campfire on Patreon?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
If you subscribe at patreon.com/campfire tales of the strange and unsettling, I know it's
Mhm.
a mouthful, but you can type it. I believe in you. Um, you get every week you get 2 weekly series. One of them is called Lights Out, which
Okay.
is basically Ryan and I's short fiction, like an exploration in short fiction.
Oh,
So
cool.
each episode is 3 to 5 short stories, um, read with full sound design and all
Ooh,
that. And then we release in the middle of the week, usually Wednesday or Thursday every week, we release um, a news update. It's midweek weird is what we're
okay.
calling it.
Nice,
And
nice.
we basically just each of us pick a few articles that piqued our interest that week and we discuss them. Now we've had some of those that went 45 minutes and we've had
Oh,
some that
wow.
went 2.5 hours.
Okay.
So it really just depends on how many rabbit holes get cracked open. Um, on top of that, you get behind the scenes videos from the research and the sound design process
Oh, that's cool.
that show some of
Okay.
that. And we started recently doing a thing called the post chat. So after we do a fireside chat, Ryan and I jump on and we basically just talk about, the experience
Dude, I love
working with
that.
that guest. And
So cool.
yeah, and we also have 2 monthly shows in the works. So we haven't
Hmm.
launched those yet, but I'll be heading a show called Into Thin Air, which
Okay.
explores the missing 411 phenomenon.
Oh, huge. Yeah.
And like each episode will be centered on one case because a lot
Ooh,
of people cover missing 411 all at once.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You'll see a podcast do like an hour-long episode covering the entire phenomenon, but to me, every one of those cases, and there are thousands of those cases, deserve, a deep dive.
Oh, for sure,
There's
man. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what that's
Okay.
for.
Oh,
And then
that's cool.
Ryan's monthly show is, I believe, going to be called Hushman, and
Hmm.
it's about Men in Black encounters.
Oh man, really?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah, doing the same thing basically, like spending a lot of time on individual encounters.
that's awesome. That is very
Yeah.
cool.
So on top of all
And
that, swag bags every month and discounted merch and exclusive merch.
dude, I'm
Yeah,
loving. So I'll put that. And is that like a $5 thing, or where does that
yeah.
start at? Yeah.
There's all of the bonus content you can unlock at $5.
Wow, that's huge. Okay,
All of it.
very
You
cool.
start getting swag bags and merch discounts at the $15 tier. There's 5, 15, and then for anyone feeling particularly generous, there's a $50 tier.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's a thing where content creators sometimes, and I know this is me talking to myself, we forget to you need to share what you do for people to know because
yeah,
they can't get inside your head. So
yeah, absolutely.
at least that I know they can't get inside my head. So we'll see. Maybe some can. Oh, scary.
Oh man,
Um, let's. I like to. There's a few Bigfoot questions I like to throw out on everyone
sure.
that comes to the podcast. So we'll spend a few minutes seeing what you got here. So I like to ask, what is Bigfoot?
Man,
I know,
we could do an hour just on that.
I know, right?
Um,
But to you, what is
right.
Bigfoot? Yeah.
I feel personally like it has to be something beyond just a bipedal ape
Hmm.
in the forest.
Okay.
It feels like something more than that to me.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if it's I'm just gonna throw these words out here like they don't mean anything, but
Okay.
extraterrestrial. I don't know
Oh.
if it's ultra terrestrial. I don't, but to me, it has to be something other than strictly, a biological entity.
Okay.
Just because if you listen to the reports, which I know you have,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many details in there that just don't line up with it being a an animal. There's so much more. Like, when you're chasing an elk over a ridge, it doesn't just vanish. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
Or control an orb with its
yeah,
hand. I've
yeah,
gotten that account to me in an interview.
that's a huge thing. If you get into,
Absolutely.
like, the Bigfoot encounters from the '70s and early '80s, there are a
Mm.
ton where Bigfoot is spotted in close proximity with UFO sightings. I mean, just
Yes.
a ton.
Yep. Chestnut Ridge,
Yep,
Pennsylvania.
yep,
Yeah. Yeah. Myself personally, I'm kind of in like the NAWAC, camp where it's an undiscovered great ape. But the thing is like you brought that up. Like I don't know how to answer that. Where I'm like, I hear these reports about like, you know, um, disappearing or like a portal on Skinwalker
yeah,
Ranch and a Bigfoot walking out of it. I don't know how to answer that.
yeah,
It brings up a question that I don't have the answer to. So yeah, it's a
absolutely.
great point, Jordan.
I mean, that's the fun of it, right?
It is a fun.
Unanswered questions.
Yeah, it is because it's like, you don't get to a point where it's like, "Oh, game over. Now pick
Yeah,
another game." The game could go on forever.
yeah. And I
Um,
love that
yeah.
we can, like, sit here and have this conversation where you're like a bone and hair guy, and I'm like pushing the extraterrestrial and, something beyond, but we're not like screaming at each other like people were like 20 years ago.
See,
You know what I
that's
mean?
that's the thing, Jordan, because it's like, isn't it awesome when people can be like, adults and like have discussions and they're not
Yeah,
on the same page maybe about what they think about the topic, but they can learn from each other. And like,
Yeah.
Cliff Barackman is a great example of, he's got so many times he's talked on, Bigfoot and Beyond, about how he talks to his colleagues, and they both know that they're totally different sides of the Bigfoot spectrum, but they can still be adults, not yell at each other, not say blah 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 blah, but there's,
Yeah.
like, at the end of the day, they know where they stand, and you can be an adults and learn from each other. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
that's
think
the most important thing to take away from this, I think.
yeah, I think that's becoming like a lost art, right? The
Mhm.
ability to disagree cordially.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, totally, totally. Do you have a favorite piece of Bigfoot evidence that you like?
I really like the the actual like detached foot that from the Yeti that all those
Okay,
legends about
okay, yeah.
the monks.
Mhm,
I know that's been tested a few times and they've come up like inconclusive or
mhm.
but there's so much like lore around that too with the expeditions coming over and like stealing a toe off the foot
Right,
and
the Jimmy
like
Stewarts.
yeah, yeah, just all this crazy stuff. I every time I watch It's a Wonderful Life now, I'm like, that guy stole a Yeti toe.
The dude
Like,
smuggled a Yeti toe back to America from, you know it's
dude,
just wild.
celebrities back then were wild.
They're
They were
wild
getting
now.
back before they were reined in by social media
That's right,
when
man.
they were just doing whatever they wanted in the shadows.
Yeti toe, what should I do with this? And
Exactly.
smuggle.
I think I'll take it home.
So good, so good.
But yeah,
Uh,
there's endless amounts of Bigfoot stuff that
there
is
is,
great.
there
I
is.
don't I don't know. I don't that's my favorite just because the stories around it, for
That's
sure.
awesome. That's awesome. That's one that doesn't get brought up a lot, so that's pretty cool. Everyone usually, jumps to, like, Patterson Gimlin, which is fine
Sure.
because Patterson Gimlin is cool. But hats off to you for the Yeti stuff for sure. Um, what's your what well, first off, what are you reading right now?
Oh man.
We'll start with that.
What am I reading right now? Let me just show you.
All right.
Currently,
Mhm.
I'm on a reread of
The Wastelands by Stephen King. All right.
yeah, book 3 in the Dark Tower series. That's that's what I'm reading, on the fiction end.
Okay.
And on nonfiction, where'd you go? Nonfiction. I'm reading this.
Oh, yeah, Kenny Irish, nice.
Yep.
American Cryptid. That's a guy I've gotta have on this show. I need to have him on.
Yeah, Kenny
A lot of
seems very
people have
cool.
a lot of people have requested him. I just haven't gotten around to asking, so,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's what I'm bouncing back and forth between right now.
Nice, nice, very cool. Do you have, any recommendations, for books particular to cryptozoology that, uh, people should have on their bookshelves, or anything that you found to be, helpful over the years or when you're doing your research?
Um, let's see. Honestly, there's anything by Lauren Coleman,
Yeah, that's true.
right?
Anything by Lauren Coleman. Yep.
Basically, you should have everything he's ever written.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, just an incredible resource to have at
Mm.
your disposal. He's done so much in incredible research
He has.
that yeah, I think that guy's career is like a golden ring
It
that
really
most
is.
people should be reaching for, you know?
100%.
Um,
Mhm.
but also I'll be I'll be standard. I'll be basic and say if you're into anything beyond just the biological explanations, you should read The Eighth Tower.
Okay. Now I'm not a Stephen King guy, although I've read some in junior high. It's been a long time, but I know nothing about the Tower series. I know it is a crazy adventure that if you're into it, you are into it. Is there any way that you can maybe sell sell it to me how it's like you got to check it out. Here's why it's important.
I mean, the Dark Tower series is incredible,
Okay.
but I was actually referring to The Eighth Tower by John Keel.
Well, here's me with egg on my face.
No, that's okay. I was just talking about the Dark Tower before, so.
Oh my god, that's right. Yeah, he had. I totally forgot about the Eighth Tower by John Keel. Oh my
That's
goodness, that's
awesome.
so red. Oh, you're funny. I'm okay, and we're back. Oh, that's funny. Yes, the Eighth Tower by John Keel. Of course, of course. Aaron Deese is like, come on, buddy. Yeah, I haven't read a lot of John Keel. What's so cool about that one particularly?
I think he just takes the perspective you'd expect and just blows it out.
Okay.
Like every like if you think about your approach to Fortean phenomenon as like a spider, like a spider graph, right?
Okay,
Like
sure.
circle in the middle.
Yep.
And lines out. He explores all of them. And that's a strength and a weakness, I think, in his writing.
Okay.
Is it can feel unfocused. It's especially Mothman Prophecies is extremely unfocused. It's really easy to get lost. You know how occasionally when you're reading, you have that realization that you didn't quite actually grasp the paragraph you just read?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And sometimes, most of the time, at least I hope, you go back and you reread the paragraph, right? But sometimes you just go, eh, and you keep going.
Sure.
Right? If you do that once in the Mothman Prophecies, you're going to be lost.
You're done. Yeah. Okay.
But it's sort of like he covers everything, but not really deeply because he moves around so much that he never really gets deep on any one thing, or maybe a few things, but not most of the ideas but he just cracks the surface enough to pique your interest. You know what I mean?
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay,
like
cool.
basically reading a John Keel book is like getting a lot of homework assignments.
Yep.
Yeah, which I'm a nerd. I love. Give me homework.
I gotta check it out. That's awesome. Oh my goodness, funny stuff. Let's do one more question before we transition over to the after show.
All right.
What would you have to say is your favorite, if you had to pick a favorite cryptid, what would it be, or which one do you just really enjoy and all that?
It's the Kushtaka.
Oh yeah, Alaska. That's the otter man, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, that's a weird one. Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
What's
that's
that?
man, it's my favorite. I love the lore that comes from like First Nations people.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a huge, I mean, anytime I get to research that, I just dive into it. And those are the weeks that I always have to get that reminder text from Ryan going like, clock's ticking, bud. Like, cause I just live in the research.
Yeah.
But the Kushtaka I did really early in the show. I think it was like our third episode ever. It was the second one I ever researched for the show. And it just stuck with me, man. It's like, it's this really terrifying amalgam of like a Sasquatch and a skinwalker.
Yeah.
Man. And it has all this shamanic background.
Okay.
Like, and this deep, this like rich culture of the Tlingit people that backs it up. And and a lot of those are great history, but sightings drop off around like 1930 and you just can't find anything after that, you know?
Oh, weird. Okay.
But the Kushtaka is not like that. There have been sightings regularly up until the most recent one I read was just a couple months ago.
Dude, that's wild.
Like, yeah, and there was like a rash of sightings during a tsunami warning in
Ooh,
2012, I think.
okay.
That like, man, it's wild.
Yikes.
I just love them. I love the
Isn't
Kashaka.
is that the one that Charlie Sheen was trying to, like, go after? Do you remember?
I don't
Charlie
think
Sheen was
so.
trying to go after a cryptid. I can't remember which one. I'm gonna have to look it up, but there was this I remember this news article way back, and it was like, "Charlie Sheen searches for a cryptid," and can't remember if it's the Kostaka or not. I have to look it up, but anyways. Oh, man. Jordan, it has been super, super fun having you on. It's been a long time coming. Let's take a few minutes before we go over to the after show. Can you remind people how best to keep up to date with everything that you're doing?
Yes. Follow Campfire Tales of the Strange and Unsettling on Instagram and Facebook at campfire.tales.podcast or on Twitter at campfire TOTSAU. We're also on TikTok now.
Yes, you are,
We're
and you're
just
killing it.
recently, just about a week ago, broke into TikTok, so we're learning the ropes over there. It's a lot. It's a lot. But we're really enjoying it.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Campfire.podcast on TikTok. Yeah. And the show is available on all podcast platforms. Anywhere
Mhm.
you're listening to this, aside from YouTube, you can listen to us. So yeah, please
Very
do.
cool. Very good. Yeah, definitely check out Campfire on your preferred platform of choice. And if you're on TikTok, follow them on TikTok because they're sharing Jordan is sharing a really cool, crazy story about the wolf girl of is it Devil's Creek?
Yeah. Devil's
Oh, and
River.
Devil's River is wild, dude.
Yeah. We
It's
actually
wild.
just
It's
wrapped
got
it up today.
pictures. It's got oh man, in multi parts. You'll love it. It's just a good example of things to come
Hmm.
from Campfire on there. But definitely, I'll have everything down in the show notes as well, so you can go check stuff out. But thanks so much for coming on, Jordan.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This was super fun.
Thanks for listening to the Bigfoot Society podcast. Please take a few minutes to review the show on iTunes, 5 stars, as it does help us get into the eyes and ears of more listeners on iTunes. That will help us just get bigger and bigger and get even better quality guests for future shows. Also, if you have any Bigfoot encounters or cryptid encounters, please send your stories and audio and photos, whatever you've got, over to bigfootsociety@gmail.com. If you'd like to become more involved with Bigfoot Society and get some extra content, we do have a Patreon where you can get all sorts of cool things. For example, for $7 a month, you get extra Bigfoot Society content, usually interviews, but other things as well. You get a sweet membership card and a vinyl sticker that I send to you in the mail. You get access to the Bigfoot Society after show, which is an extra interview after the main interview with the weekly guest, and usually they are up for Patreon members to be in that extra show segment with them and me, and you get to ask your question live to them and get an answer from the guest, which, as you've seen what guest we've had in the past, this could be a really big deal. There's also a private Discord where you can get involved with talking to me one-on-one and the community there, and that's always a great time. You can find the Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. We're very thankful for all our supporters that we have in so many different ways and appreciate all our listeners coming back week after week to listen to more cryptozoology-based interviews. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. The views and opinions expressed are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Bigfoot Society. Any content provided by our guests are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone. Thank you.